Well, hello, and welcome to Hoosier Memories. I'm Nancy, just a history nerd, and today we're going to talk about one of the earlier residents of Henryville. His name was Lawson Gross, and yes, I know, his stone is really dirty, and I will get to it, but not today. Today we're going to tell a little bit about his story, and it starts with his parents in Virginia. His father, William Gross, was born in 1786. He would marry his wife, Eva Holstein, in 1816 in Washington County, Virginia. They would then go to settle in Washington County, Indiana. You can't make this stuff up. Now, Lawson was born in 1832, the seventh of 8 children. The 1850 census shows an 18-year-old Lawson Gross listed as a farmer in Franklin Township in Washington County, and he's living with his parents. Something happens, and in September of 1852, there is an ad in the Washington Democrat selling the family farm. This came just before the family moved to Henryville. Now, if you'll notice, it says that you're going to get a bargain. So it sounds like the family was very motivated. Unfortunately, William dies in 1858, and he's buried in Conway Cemetery in Washington County, so they still had ties to that area. Now, the 1860 census lists Lawson as a common school teacher. He's 28 years old and living with his mother. But that changes very quickly because on July 21st of 1860, he marries Maria K. Lewis. Her parents, John and Mary, had settled in Indiana from Ohio. But the really interesting stuff comes next. September 20th, 1864, Lawson Gross was drafted. He's listed as an unassigned recruit for the 37th Indiana, but he would later fight with the 74th Indiana, Company B. He musters out as a private June 9th, 1865. But what I want to show you is a letter he had written to a friend on April 3rd, 1865. Now, I don't know if he knew the war was about to end. He doesn't talk about that. But the letter he wrote was to Lemuel Brazilla Guernsey. Really, that was his name. And he writes about his experiences under General Sherman's command. Lawson must have been a very close friend, since Brazilla would sign his name Lemuel B. Guernsey to most documents and notices, and never his middle name. Now, Brazilla was a family name of sorts. His ancestors on his mother's side had been called Barzilla, and over time it must have changed. And some of you may have heard of his father, Reverend Seymour Guernsey, who had donated the land for Mount Zion Church and Cemetery. His uncle, Burritt Guernsey, kept a diary that has helped historians understand the day-to-day life of early Henryville. But let's get back to the letter. Lawson apologizes for not writing as often. He was on picket duty and says that he's using his knapsack as his writing desk and the ground as his seat. In his letter, he writes, "Sherman's invisible army cannot write just whenever they wish to. For when he starts out, he leaves all communication behind and starts for a new base. Well, we have seen a great many things, some very funny ones, and some not so very funny. I wrote Elam a letter the other day in which I gave the particulars of our march from Savannah here as near as I could on so small of a space." He mentions that he keeps a diary so that it would later help him tell his yarns. He lists boyhood friends he had seen and his distaste for soldier's life, but he plans to serve his year with cheerfulness. He signs it, "Kindest regards to yourself and family and all inquiring friends. Yours with respect, Lawson Gross. This is the only letter we have found from Lawson, and it's a shame, as we could have learned so much more from his diary. I do want to thank the Indiana Historical Society. They downloaded a copy of this letter, and I have forwarded it on to the Indiana Room in the Charlestown Library. It's a 4-page letter, and it is just amazing, and he has beautiful handwriting. Well, things began to change after the war. Lawson comes home, and soon Mary, his daughter, is born. They call her Molly, and he seems to be very industrious. His 1866 tax records lists him as a lawyer, as an auctioneer, and taking part in auction sales. However, the 1870 census lists him as a school teacher living with his wife and daughter. He taught school in the log cabin, which was also the church and community building near Little Union Cemetery. Unfortunately, in 1877, Lawson dies. Nothing more has been found for Mariah. However, his daughter married Martin Hodap in Jackson County, March 24, 1891. She is shown here having filed for survivors' pension benefits, listing Lawson as her father in 1931. Now, that would have been right at the very beginning of the Depression, so I'm sure every little bit counted. Unfortunately, she dies in 1933 and is buried in Seymour. His mother remained in Henryville after he died, and in 1895, Eva Gross dies at the age of 99 years old. She's buried near her husband in Conway Cemetery. And now you know the story of Lawson Gross. I hope you enjoyed your time with Hoosier Memories, and I thank you for listening.